Hi, my name's Jackson Perry, and I just graduated from UNC this past year. The fall of my freshman year, I rushed. I came into school and I didn't really know many older guys at UNC except for maybe one or two guys from my high school. So I started off by going to several fraternity rush events over the first couple weeks, just trying out as many as I could and meeting a ton of people. But from the beginning, I really found it tough to separate which guys were having the most fun and who I'd actually want to be friends with over the next 4 years. And it's really hard to understand house culture through parties and rush events and rumors from the guys you're rushing around with. So just a little background on me. I did end up pledging and joining a fraternity my freshman year fall. While at the time I certainly considered myself a Christian and I believe I deeply wanted to have an identity in Christ, my faith was really dependent on how I appeared to others, by what I did and by what I didn't do, and by showing up at church on Sunday mornings. And because of this, I didn't really go through the rush process or the pledging process with my faith in the forefront. I had certain moral values I wanted to stay true to, and I knew I wanted to be a Christian at UNC, but my desire to be in a fraternity was really separate from that. So that year, I also got very involved in crew ministries and was fairly torn by, at the time, as what I saw as mutually exclusive social circles. It wasn't until a men's retreat with crew where one of my friends in my fraternity came up to me and asked me why I didn't invite him, and he said he's been looking to get involved in stuff like that on campus. And that kind of marked my introduction of finding a Christian community in my fraternity. So later that year, both of us ended up getting involved in Greek Life, which is an arm of crew ministries that's specifically for men and women in the Greek system. And it's probably where I spent my most time and made some of my best friends during my 4 years at Carolina. Through the large groups and prayer breakfasts and Bible studies, it gave me the confidence that God had a plan for me and all the other men and women in the Greek system. My sophomore year, several guys in my fraternity got together and decided we want to start a weekly Bible study in the house. At the time, my fraternity didn't have one, but I know several fraternities across campus had and still have a very visible Christian community. But at the time, with a very limited Bible knowledge, this was something that really challenged me. And I mention this just because originally I joined a fraternity as something completely separate from my relationship with Christ. But it's crazy thinking back on how quickly these things became intertwined. My fraternity was really the environment that was pushing me to learn more about my faith. So if you're thinking about joining fraternity and you're already watching this video or you're plugged into the study center, then you're a lot farther into this thinking process than I was when I was coming into UNC. I think if you're a committed Christian and thinking about rushing, I'd be constantly praying and asking God where he wants you. I'd look to mentors for advice, whether that be your parents or your pastor, older guys in the fraternity you're interested in, the study center, Greek Life, or whatever. I know God has an important plan for the Greek system at UNC, and he's constantly calling young men who want to join fraternities, want to grow in brotherhood in this culture to serve his kingdom for his glory. And maybe this doesn't even mean you have to end up where there's a super visible Christian community. I think that's definitely an important consideration, but that's not where I necessarily ended up, and I know this was because of God's sovereignty over my life. And I think going into Rush, if you have close friends in a specific fraternity already, just be straight up with them. Ask them questions on what it's like beyond the parties in the Rush event. Are the guys getting along? What are people involved with on campus? How are guys doing academically? What's pledging like? But if you don't know many people, see if you can get to know some of the seniors through the rush process. These are men that have been formed through this group the last 4 years. Are these guys you look up to or would want to be like in the next 4 years? I also think that before you go into rush, come to some kind of internal stance on what your moral boundaries are. What are the non-negotiables? If you're staying true to what you believe and you're in a group of guys that you'd actually want to spend the next 4 years with, then I promise that's something that's going to be respected. But if you go in without a vision or a plan of what you're saying no to, it's already the first night of rush, It's a lot tougher. Also, as you look at Rush, look at the other Rushies. I know going in, you're going to want to meet a bunch of the older guys in the fraternity, but the guys rushing and going through the same process you are going to be the ones you're spending the most time with over the next 4 years. Also, consider coming to Greek Life, Crew, RUF, Summit, or another campus ministry even before you begin pledging a fraternity. I'm sure there's tons of guys in those ministries who are excited to get to know you and give you more specific advice on who to talk to or where to think about rushing. And as far as being a Christian in a fraternity, I think in a lot of ways it's challenging, but not in ways very different than most social environments at UNC. And unlike many of the other groups you'll be a part of during your time at Carolina, fraternities are creating lifelong brothers and will be a reason you want to come back to UNC after graduation year after year.